What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another Netflix recommendation video for September of 2018. In these videos, I like to look over what some of the new additions are to Netflix for the month, look at some of the stuff that's maybe going to leave for next month, and then maybe some like hidden gems that are sort of just hidden around on Netflix, because everyone always has free time and it's a struggle to always find what to watch. So here's a few things that you can just throw on your list and then scroll between when you're trying to find something, and it cuts it down at least. Now, the first movie I'm going to recommend is definitely a movie that some people probably hate a lot, but it holds a special place in my heart because I watched it when I was a kid and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I also really loved the PS2 game of this movie, and that movie is Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. And I know this movie's kind of dumb, and it also has at times some of the worst CGI maybe ever put into a movie theater, but the story is a lot of fun. It basically tells the story of Van Helsing, who is this notorious character from lore who hunted down monsters like vampires and werewolves and all this stuff, and he's basically hired to go take care of Dracula in this film, but along the way he obviously fights a whole bunch of other monsters and stuff, and it's just a big fun movie. Like, it doesn't try to have a lot of depth or do anything crazy. It's literally just Hugh Jackman playing as a guy who has an automatic crossbow shooting at flying vampires and teaming up with Kate Beckinsale to kill Dracula. I don't really know what more you want. I know that maybe it's not the greatest film in the world, but if you want something fun to just sit and watch, Van Helsing is definitely entertaining. Now, going from what is probably the dumbest movie on this list to probably the highest par film on this list, let's talk about the documentary The Thin Blue Line. Now, this is Errol Morris's sort of magnum opus. This is a film that tells the story of a murder of a man, and it goes very in-depth as to how his trial, his arrest, all of these things happened that eventually led to the case being re-looked into because of this documentary. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to give away the details of the case or anything. I was actually lucky enough to basically be forced to watch this movie in a documentary film class that I took. I probably never would have watched it if it wasn't for that class, and it's genuinely a very riveting story because the whole way through you don't know who to trust, because as a documentarian you expect him to be non-biased, but you also don't know if maybe he's siding one way or the other in his storytelling, and you also don't know if what you're seeing is true. It has a lot of very cool reenactments of the events that took place in real life, and I think the way that they're shown is very accurate to what probably really happened, but the details change as the film goes on and as we learn more about the story and how things took place and how this system worked. If you enjoy documentaries, especially crime documentaries, this is maybe the best one that's ever been made. The next film on my list is one that all of you have probably seen, but in case you haven't, you should probably check it out since it's now free on Netflix, and that's Marvel's Black Panther. And like I said, this was one of the most popular films that has been made all year. It made an insane amount of money, everybody watched it, but if you haven't seen it, it's probably worth watching. It's a pretty solid film, it's got a decent story, the action's alright, and it fits well into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It tells the story of basically T'Challa taking over the throne of Wakanda after his father's death in Marvel Civil War, and then him basically having to fight off people that are trying to come into Wakanda who are enemies of the country. It's not a very crazy story, it's very fitting for what you're watching. It does have a lot of fun twists and turns and cool action, like I said. If you didn't check it out, you should probably check it out, and I'm mostly putting it on this list because of the fact that Marvel has stated that they will be putting on a campaign to get this film nominated for Oscars. It's the first time they're ever actively using a campaign to get a film nominated. They've never done that before. The movies normally get nominated for like Best Visual Effects or something like that, but this is the first time they're doing a full-fledged campaign for one of their films, so because it may be an Oscar movie next year, I think you should definitely check it out. The next film on my list is Spike Jonze's Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, and Scarlett Johansson. This film tells the story of a guy who in the future is basically nearing the end of his divorce, and he works as a letter writer. People will send in like what's going on, why they're sending this letter to someone, and he will type up like a heartfelt letter for them to send to their loved one. It's a very interesting premise for a film, but the thing that makes this movie so interesting is that he decides to buy this new OS1, which is this operating system that you can talk to and will basically manage everything in your life for you. Scarlett Johansson voices this. And Joaquin Phoenix basically begins to have a relationship with this operating system. So this whole film is this romance movie about a man who has just ended his relationship with a real life person and has now basically started a relationship with a computer. It's a very interesting film. It has a lot to say about how much technology plays a part in our lives and the facade that that technology can give people. I think that this movie is genuinely fantastic. Spike Jonze got nominated a lot of places when this film came out. It's a very, very important movie that honestly I feel like not a lot of people saw. It didn't get a wide release when it came out, so it was a little hard to find. And now that it's basically available to everyone on Netflix, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's one of my personal favorite romance films. The next film on this list is a movie that came out earlier this year that I, seemingly as an unpopular opinion, really enjoyed, and that's Christian Bale's Hostiles. For some reason, no one else seems to like this movie as much as me. I have talked to many people, and so far I have yet to find someone that enjoyed this movie as much as I did. And I know that I kind of have a little bit of an odd taste and a little bit of a soft spot when it comes to movies that are westerns, but I thought that this movie was very good. It tells the story of a captain who is given the job of taking a Native American chief back to his homeland so he can die peacefully, where he basically views as his home. Christian Bale, however, has been fighting Native Americans his whole career in the military, basically. So he has a deep-seated hatred for them. And he really doesn't want to do it, but he's basically just forced to. So he takes his little group of people, and they all take this Native American chief and his family to this land so that he can die peacefully there. But of course, their journey is full of strife from whether it be other smugglers, traitors, other Native American tribes trying to kill them. And it's a very in-depth story that shows the humanity behind these people that committed acts that were for their own protection but also horrible. And I really like this movie because I really like history. And it's so hard sometimes when you think about soldiers who fought against Native Americans on the American frontier or in the Civil War or something, and putting humanity in them. Because these are men who fought in these conflicts for the reasons that they believe to be right and would do horrible things to make sure that they won. And it's so awesome. And I think Christian Bale's performance is why it's so awesome, that they were able to capture that in such a perfect way. There are 2 or 3 scenes in this film with Christian Bale where he is just breathtakingly good in his performance. At least to me. Some people seem to think it was dry. I thought this movie was riveting. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a journey, it's an adventure, it's an action movie, it's a drama. It has so many elements and it's just so well made. Now to lighten the list up a little bit, the next film is Forgetting Sarah Marshall, the Jason Segel, Kristen Bell comedy. This film tells the story of a guy and his girlfriend who have been in a long-term relationship, but when she chooses to break up with him, he is basically just devastated, just fully broken down, and he decides that he needs to go on a vacation alone to just try to loosen up and get through this. So he goes on a vacation to Hawaii, but little does he know, his ex-girlfriend is there with her new boyfriend in literally the room right next to him at the hotel. So it doesn't help his depression at all, and it obviously leads to a bunch of fun moments. Mila Kunis is also in this film. This is a Judd Apatow film following Knocked Up and The 40-Year-Old Virgin, so it's still very much in that early Apatow stage. It's a very funny film. It has a lot more action moments, I guess, than a lot of Apatow films because of the fact that they're sort of touristy in Hawaii. They go do cliff diving and things like that. And there's a lot of really good moments, but I think that this film also has a very good story at its heart about their relationship and what each of them is sort of going through at this time. Not to mention, this movie is full of weird little cameos from people who are now massively famous now because they were like Apatow friends, so they have like small roles in a lot of his early films, and I really enjoyed that, but that's just sort of a little thing that you can look back on. But if you've never seen this movie, if you're looking for a fun, light comedy to watch, this is a good one. It's got a lot of weird, quirky stuff because Jason Segel likes to do a lot of weird, quirky stuff in his movies, and I think it's a very enjoyable movie. And now to go from a Jason Segel comedy to the best performance Jason Segel has given in his career, and that is The End of the Tour. Now, if you've watched my recommendation videos from Hulu or Amazon in the past, I have put this movie on those lists before, but I love this movie. It tells the story of author David Foster Wallace, who wrote Infinite Jest, which is widely considered maybe the greatest book ever written since the year 2000 and one of the greatest books ever written of all time. And this is about his interview with Rolling Stone writer David Lipsky. They go on his tour. Lipsky joins him for the last step of his tour. He's going on basically his little press junket in Minneapolis, and he joins him along the way the whole time. This movie is full of so many beautiful moments and so much wonderful writing. It's hard to even state. Every time I watch this movie, I'm blown away at how much I enjoy it again and again and again. The on-screen chemistry between Segel and Jesse Eisenberg, who plays David Lipsky, is so good. They get along, but yet they butt heads so well at the same time, and I found them to be a wonderful duo to watch on screen. They bring in so much comedy and so much love into this story about this man who just wanted to live his life, but happened to write this magnum opus of a book that just blew the world away and made everyone think that he could be the next F. Scott Fitzgerald or Ernest Hemingway or something. And I absolutely adore this movie in every way. Jason Segel's performance is Oscar-worthy, and Jesse Eisenberg's performance is also absolutely fantastic. If you've never seen the end of the tour, watch it on Netflix as soon as possible because it is just so damn good. The Boondock Saints is the next film on this list. This is a pretty simple story. It's about two Irish brothers living in Boston who decide to take it into their own hands to basically kill the mob and become vigilantes. This movie is kind of a cult classic, I would say, in the action genre, which is kind of odd. It literally is just the story of these two brothers who kind of get mixed up in this fight, and they end up killing a couple mobsters in self-defense. And then they decide that they want to just eliminate the mob because they're causing too many problems in the city. So they buy some guns, and then basically they go out on this vigilante adventure. But the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. It definitely has a lot of very funny moments because they're not exactly like trained killers, so they mess up at times, they do dumb stuff sometimes, but I think that this movie has stood up to the test of time because of how different it feels. It also does have fantastic action, I will definitely say that. This movie is filmed very well, the shootouts in it are great, and in all honesty, it's a shock that this movie isn't held to a higher bar in terms of action movies for a lot of people because I think it's so good. This was actually my favorite movie of all time when I was in the 9th grade. My favorite movie has changed now, but that doesn't change the fact that I still love the Boondock Saints. If you haven't seen it and you like a little bit of comedy in your action films but still really, really quality action, I would say check this one out. As weird of a comparison as it is to make, if you like Die Hard, I would say watch the Boondock Saints. While the story is totally different from any other Die Hard, I think the tone of the film is very similar. The Brad Pitt film Troy is the next movie on this list. This film tells the story of Achilles and the battle of the Greeks against the Trojans from Homer's Odyssey. Brad Pitt, of course, plays Achilles in the film, the famous soldier who was dipped into a pool of immortality, but all of his heel was dipped in, so it was the only weak place on his body. And this film is full of fantastic fight sequences. Brad Pitt, I think, gives probably the most physical performance of his life in this movie, and he sells every second of it. Like, he is so good throughout this whole film. It's full of big epic speeches like you would expect from any sword and sandal movie. It has all the characters from Homer's Odyssey. You actually get to meet Odysseus in the film, who's played by Sean Bean, ironically enough. And I think the film's really good. Sean Bean does a good job. He doesn't have a very big role as Odysseus. And then Orlando Bloom plays Paris, who is really good. And then Eric Bana. Surprisingly, good job, Eric Bana. Not to say I hate you or anything, I just have never really been that impressed with your on-screen career, but he holds his own against Brad Pitt in this film in terms of physicality. And the direction style doesn't try to hide the action that's taking place. It's very open about the big battle sequences and the different types of combat, and to my knowledge, I've never personally researched this, but in things that I've read, there is one specific fight scene in this film where they actually utilize real strategies that people would use at that time period in a one-on-one duel. And I found that to be very interesting because that fight scene specifically, which I don't want to spoil what it is if you've never seen the film, is one of probably the best one-on-one fights that's ever taken place in a film. And the last film on my list for this month is Leonardo DiCaprio's Aviator. This is the Martin Scorsese film that personally I think most people think is Leonardo DiCaprio's greatest performance he's given in his career. I sure think that it is. He should have won the Oscar for this film because he is breathtaking in this movie as Howard Hughes, the aviation's billionaire who actually later in his life began to suffer from severe mental illness, whether it was depression or anxiety or OCD or whatever. They really don't ever give a definitive definition of what it is, but he suffers from a debilitating fear of so many things in the world, and he is so good in this movie, Leonardo DiCaprio, in this performance. The movie is full of giant spectacle because he was this extremely wealthy man, and it's also full of extreme lows in a person's life. You get to see certain people that did exist at the time. You get to see Alec Baldwin as the head of Pan Am, which was very interesting. There are definitely a lot of characters. The movie won a bunch of Oscars when it came out. Sadly, Leo didn't win, but this is a very true-to-life biopic about Howard Hughes, depicted by Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Martin Scorsese. There really isn't that much more to say. I will admit, it's a long movie. It's almost 3 hours long. But if you love the people involved in making it, watch this film because it is fantastic and it is the best performance of Leo's career. And then I do want to throw out one little bonus, and this isn't a movie, it's just a little documentary series you can watch on Netflix, and it's Planet Earth 1 and 2. They're both just so good. As someone who isn't a very big fan of television, they're very, very select shows that I watch. I really love a good, calm documentary series, and Planet Earth was something I threw on in the background one day and then got absolutely enthralled by. I've watched both of them all the way through, probably 3 or 4 times at this point. They're so good. They teach you so many random fun facts about the world that we live in, and it's just a wonderful thing to see. If you like documentaries, and like I said, it's something you can very easily throw on in the background, watch Planet Earth because it's just so engaging. It's filmed so beautifully. The voiceover is so great from David Attenborough. It's just a fantastic little documentary series. Well, guys, those are my recommendations on Netflix for September of 2018. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of my picks, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.